Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition. And we are specifically going to talk about how Critical Role has become a very major part of being the very best you can be as a Dungeon Master, and how it really has a different space for 5th Edition Dungeon Masters than we expected. This content aligns with GARIBAY'S Peak Path. Wait a second, what's that? If you don't know, just listen to this video, and then if there's any parts that didn't fit right like a puzzle piece in your head, just read the article below on GARIBAY'S Peak Path. It's basically my philosophy for how to play the world's best tabletop role-playing game. And the only reason I'm pointing you to that is just so I don't have to repeat myself in a lot of videos. It's just tighter content for everybody. All right, so let's get into it. Okay, so I'm doing my homework, okay, and basically I'm watching. I am consuming Critical Role Campaign 3, and the reason why is I have come to the new opinion that if you are going to be the best Dungeon Master you can possibly be, if you're going to be a good 5th Edition Dungeon Master, you have to know what Dungeons & Dragons is. And I don't think you can know what Dungeons & Dragons is today without understanding Critical Role. I think we've reached a new point, right? And the reason why is Dungeons & Dragons isn't like any other tabletop role-playing game. Dungeons & Dragons has a rich, robust American history that no other tabletop role-playing game in the world shares with it. It also has Matthew Mercer. Matthew Mercer is a dungeon master who plays at a level that no other dungeon master in the world plays. His game is so important that he is attaching the name Dungeons & Dragons to what I believe to be the Matthew Mercer experience, okay? And the Matthew Mercer experience is specifically what Critical Role is. You tune into Matthew Mercer's Critical Role, where Matthew Mercer is the Dungeon Master, and you're going to experience something that I think is the Matthew Mercer experience, and it is Dungeons & Dragons adjacent. It is bolted on to modern Dungeons & Dragons, okay? Now, actually, it's just bolted onto Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition. If you play Dungeons & Dragons 4th Edition, 3rd Edition, 2nd Edition, and 1st Edition, right, what Matthew Mercer does isn't going to impact you. And the reason why is you're really playing a Dungeons & Dragons that really isn't relevant anymore. And so, but if you're playing a relevant game of Dungeons & Dragons, Matthew Mercer is going to impact your game. And as a Dungeon Master, you have to understand that Dungeons & Dragons is no longer free of Matthew Mercer. The global perception, the American perception of Dungeons & Dragons, and by extension the global perspective of Dungeons & Dragons, I believe that the global perspective of Dungeons & Dragons is fundamentally grounded in the American perception of Dungeons & Dragons, right? It's just an echo of the American perception. It has a few flourishes and a little bit of a difference, but it starts with the American perception because Dungeons & Dragons is an American game. It continues to be an American game, and it really, most of its influences are coming from America, okay? All right, so with that said, I don't believe you can really run a good game of Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition without being current on Critical Role, without understanding what's happened at the Critical Role table. Why is that? It is because of the Matthew Mercer experience. I think the vast majority of players today, it is highly unlikely that you play 5th Edition and are playing without a single player who has never watched Matthew Mercer. I don't think that's even possible, right? I really don't think it's possible that any Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition campaign, right, something that's going on for 10 sessions plus, right, that no one at that table hasn't seen Matthew Mercer, which means that Matthew Mercer is very much setting the expectations for your game through his game, okay? And so I actually think that all 5th Edition Dungeon Masters, in order to be very, very good, the best they can possibly be, right, pursuing peak Dungeons & Dragons, they have to know what's happening on Critical Role right now in the current version. And the reason why is you can't be a good 5th Edition Dungeon Master, in my humble opinion, without knowing what Dungeons & Dragons is today And you cannot know what Dungeons & Dragons is today if you don't understand your player's perception of Matthew Mercer's game. That's it, okay? This is completely new, and I am doing my homework. So right now, one, I went over and I turned on Critical Role episode 1 and started to watch through it. I could not get through it. It is utterly unwatchable. I think Critical Role, current episodes of Critical Role, is unwatchable to anyone who loves Dungeons and Dragons at the macro level and has played more than 5th edition, right? If you've played, and if you're a very committed Dungeon Master, it will be very, very difficult to watch Critical Role, right? Now you're like, wait, what's going on, Scott? You're saying that I absolutely have to make sure that I understand what's going on with Critical Role, but you're saying it's unwatchable? Yes, it's called nuance. You will find it here on the internet every now and then. So stay with me. All right. So basically, I find Critical Role completely unwatchable. It's 4 hours of agony to me for multiple reasons. I'm not going to give you all those reasons right now, right? But what I will do is I'm going to give you the solution that I have, okay? So there are many Critical Role recaps. No, I'm not kidding. Multiple people recap it, right? And I have found a fantastic recap of Critical Role. So I'm going to put the recap below, right? And this guy is recapping the current Critical Role. And you can get the entire experience of the Critical Role episode in 20 minutes and get all the highlights and understand what's happening with Critical Role. You also should jump on and just look at what the new set is. Look at what, Matthew Mercer is doing. Look at what Marissa Ray is doing. Look at what Travis Willingham is doing. Look at what Laura Bela is doing. I don't know the names of any of the rest of them. But it's really important. There's something really critical, really special, really unique happening here on Critical Role. If you're going to be a good 5th edition Dungeon Master, you must understand what's happening on Critical Role. And the reason why is Dungeons & Dragons right now in its current form is bound to Matthew Mercer. When we hit the table, it is almost impossible that you are running a successful 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons campaign where not at least one of your players, if not all of your players, have not seen or are not currently watching Matthew Mercer. And because of that, it demands you understand Critical Role, Matthew Mercer, and the Critter community in order to run a successful Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition campaign today at peak Dungeons & Dragons, doing the best you can to be a Dungeon Master. All that's my opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Also, if you know anybody who recaps better than this, let me know. I doubt it. This guy's really on point. He's doing a fantastic job. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.